Hi there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. This card was so super fun to make, so I hope you enjoy watching it. I'm going to start off with a couple of kind of glitter pastes. You could literally use anything in your stash at all for this, or you could even use pre-made, just plain cardstock. It doesn't have to be glitter. I was just doing this for fun, really. But anyway, I have a yellow and an orange. These happen to be from the local Lynn Craft here in New Zealand. However, the yellow was just slightly too bright, so I've added a tiny little bit of orange to it, and I'm just spreading it out on a scrap piece of cardstock, and I'm going to die cut some things from this later on. Now, I had made some bee cards a little while ago on my channel, and my friends and family pretty much just help themselves to my card stash when they need to give a card to somebody, and they were really popular within my family, and so I thought I would make another one today that is just a little bit different. So I used that glitter paste background that we created to cut out the base to the bees, and then I'm adding the top part here just in black, and then I have cut out their wings in vellum. Here, this card does not have to be a bee card. I hope that you take this tutorial and that you can use it with anything at all could go on this card. It could be any creatures or critters that you have, stamps. It could be just love hearts. It could be just shapes. It could be anything at all. So take the idea and make it your own. It doesn't have to be bees. This is just, I find these bees super cute and enjoy using them. And my family like the cards that I make with them. So that's why I ended up with this today. But anyway, I die cut 7 bees out because I wasn't exactly sure how many I would need. So this number felt like I had it covered no matter what. Now to make the little hive that's going to go in the middle, and this is kind of just the main hive and then the outline. And I have die cut it in the same colored cardstock. It's kind of a yellowy orange, I guess. Then I have my finger daubers, which I keep in this storage case. These are all from Ali, and I will link everything down below that I can find. I am using some Walnut Stain Distress ink, but any brown ink at all under the sun will be fine for this. I just want to give the little beehive a little bit of dimension because it does sit quite flat otherwise. I am also going to add some ink to the background piece, but if you didn't have the inks or didn't want to do the inking on this, you could probably find a couple of colors, a couple of shades of yellows or oranges that would go together nicely to create similar dimension. So I'm pretty much done with this, although I do want to pop it up. So I'm going to use some of Alina's foam tape. This is the foam tape that I love at the moment for this reason here, that I can cut it into strips. Nice thin strips. She does have a skinnier foam tape, but this one was perfect for this because I could cut it into 3. And I'm just going to add it to all of the kind of bigger parts at the back of that front part of the beehive. And then once I have that in, I am going to kind of use the back of the beehive as a stencil kind of backwards, and that will enable me, because this is symmetrical, to put in the little door to the beehive completely flat. That little white tool there is a little kind of wax pencil, by the way, or a wax crayon, and I also got those off Ali, and it's kind of like, it doesn't feel sticky or anything. It just picks up little elements really well. So I have been enjoying using those pencils as well. And that is the beehive finished. So now it's kind of time to move on to the background, and I just cut out a scrap piece of paper with a cloud die from my stash, and then I'm going to use some Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink. Any light blue ink would work at all, and this is going to create the background. I mean, you could also leave this blank. I just felt like this added a little bit of interest to the background without keeping it super plain, but I definitely don't want anything to take away from our focal point in the middle, which I think would be kind of hard, but I did want to keep the background pretty plain in this case. So I'm just using a little finger dauber, and that way I feel like I can control the amount of ink quite well. And if I have a little too much ink, you can see I'm just dabbing it off on the side there so that I don't get any big splotches. And then, as usual, I quite like doing this. I'm going to ink up the borders just using a piece of post-it note tape, and then adding lots of ink with the finger dauber, and that creates a nice kind of faux border without having to add a whole nother layer of paper. Now, I must say, I pretty much stay away from super time-consuming cards because I don't often have much time, to be honest. However, I promise that this is definitely a card that you guys can do without any trouble at all. It is super simple to follow, so I do hope you give it a go. I'm starting off with this really small circle die, the black one there, and I think I cut out about 6 or 7 of these from cardstock. Now you could definitely cut this out from foam and that would be the same thing. I had a gorgeous little helper off to my side, and to keep her nice and busy, she die cut all of these for me, so that was handy. Now you're going to need a larger die, but you need to make sure that it fits behind the focal point of the front of your card. So I'm testing to make sure that it fits nicely behind that beehive without being able to see anything coming out from the sides. Then I'm going to run this through with a couple of pieces of cardstock, and I need 2 of these rings. This is going to be the part that kind of goes around the center pivot. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cut a little bit more because the smaller circle of those 2 is the same size as the ones that I cut out to create the middle pivot, and I want it to be able to slide around that nice and freely. So that's why I'm cutting just that extra little hair off. Then I have a nice piece of acetate here, and I'm cutting just, I know it's hard to see, but just little strips. It doesn't matter the width of them or anything. I cut 3 strips, and I'm going to cut them in half so I have 6 all up. So now I'm just going to add adhesive to one of those rings that we just cut, and this is going to be where I'm going to add in my little acetate strips, and these are going to hold the bees that will go around the hive. So I've just placed them out roughly where I want, and then I'm going to adhere them down onto that double-sided tape that we have around the outside of that ring. Once I've placed them all down, I'm going to take the top ring and put it on top so that there is no adhesive showing, and also I feel it kind of makes for a much stronger little ring, having 2 pieces of cardstock together. And then that's kind of as complicated as it gets. We're just going to put it all together. I am going to test it and make sure that I can slide it around nice and easy, and that is working really well. So time to put it all together. I'm putting the background onto my card base, and in this case the card base is 5.5 by 5.5 inches square, and you saw me measure out to find the middle earlier on, so I've just put a little bit of glue down and then added in that center pivot. Whilst that's drying, I thought I would add a little bit of glitter using this glitter pen from AliExpress, and I've popped that onto my beehive. Then I'm just going to pop this over, but remember, don't glue it down because it needs to move nice and freely. Then add some liquid glue to the top of the pivot and add the beehive on the front. Now it's time to kind of add in my little bees, and I know that my acetate strips here are too long, and that was always, I knew that would be the case. So I'm just kind of testing where to cut them down to so that they make sure they can go all around the beehive, because obviously I don't want it to get caught on anything on its way around. And obviously, again, the beehive is not a circle, so I just need to be careful and make sure that it can go right around the outside without catching on anything. I am adding a little bit of really strong double-sided adhesive to the end of the acetate strips, and then I'm just going to add down all of my little bees, and it's kind of starting to come together. This card was really fun to make, and I intend to do this with some other types of bits and pieces other than bees. If you decide to make a card like this, please join our Facebook group down below. The link is in the description box, and share them on the Facebook page so that we can all see these very cool creations. And I do like how the bees kind of fly so freely around the beehive. They don't kind of get stuck at all. So that worked out really well. And now I just want to do the inside because obviously the outside doesn't have a sentiment. So I have this alphabet stamp set here, and I'm actually going to use an F in place. I'm going to have it say Happy Bee Day, and I'm just going to use the E and the F because obviously I need 2 E's. But with this stamp set, it's easy to kind of change the F around. So once I've stamped it in some VersaFine Onyx black ink, I have taken off all of the letters except for the E, and then I'm just masking off that bottom wee piece to change it into an E instead of an F. And that way I don't have to have a gap there and kind of guess how much space I need. That is my card for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know what you think of this one. This is definitely one of my favorites, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye.